Before we begin, I would like to give a shout out to our Blockchain SC president Gabe. It's his birthday today, and he's working hard to make this happen. So happy birthday, Gabe. Okay. My name is Almira Ilham, and I am a member of the executive board at Blockchain SC. Today, I have the honor to introduce our next speaker. James Ho is the head of Animoca Ventures, the biggest crypto gaming fund with 100 million AUM. Since joining Animoca Group in 2018, James directly managed or originated early investments into numerous Web3 companies, including Yield Guild Games, OpenSea, Magic Eden, Matic, and Immutable X. Many of these companies are today the giants in the Web3 space, and more than a few have reached unicorn status. With a track record of over 200 deals, James brings a unique and battle-tested experience and acumen to Animoca Ventures' mission of identifying the Web3 giants of the future and building an ecosystem that boosts the performance of every investee company. Prior to Animoca, James was a serial entrepreneur and builder. His past companies had served discerning global clients such as LVMH, Richmond, Chanel, to name a few. Now let us give a warm welcome to James.
Thank you. Great. Thank you, guys. Thanks for inviting me here today. I think I want to thank the Veda team for inviting me. This is the last leg of my 35-day trip in the US, so it's been pretty exhausting, so excited to be here. Covered six cities in the last couple of weeks, so it's been a pretty intense travels. I'll be in Paris for those who are going to be in Paris Blockchain Week, and also Token 2049 in Dubai as well. So I want to keep it pretty light. I wanted to ask the people in attendance to ask more questions. I think the goal is, to share some of the deep insights of what we've seen back in 2018, what we're seeing now in this cycle that has sort of, arisen through the winter. Very excited to be here today. So I started back in Animoca in 2018, and for those that were in this space during this time, it was a pretty rough time. And I think I'm very thankful and grateful to have seen the last two bear cycles. I think there's a lot of appreciation for being the bear cycle because we had deep conviction in betting on some of the key founders. Our founder of Animoca, Yatsu, was really driving us to really believe in the future of digital asset. This really started off in our first investment in a company out of Vancouver called Dapper Labs. We had the chance to really publish CryptoKitties. For those that know CryptoKitties, it was one of the first companies to use ERC-721. That sort of shed the light, and it really gave us a eureka moment when we published CryptoKitties to crash the Ethereum network. We pivoted the company. Animoca is actually a 20-year-old company, really getting the first foray into free-to-play. Crashing the Ethereum network got us extremely excited about what the future held for digital ownership. And we actually started really operationalizing the team to go into Web3. So luckily, I joined the team in 2018, tough times, came up with a really simple strategy. What would we bet on in the future if we look in the lens of the future that were imperative for the success of Web3? My first investment at the time was actually OpenSea. There were 5 people building marketplaces. They were ones that were the most technical. So luckily, we had a chance to really bet on some of the key people. I was not a really big fan of cute things. That's changed now. Yat had done the early deals for Hello Kitty and whatnot, so they've experienced a lot of really cute things. He told me there's this company called Axie Infinity. I was like, the game does not work. He basically doubled down against my advice. Thankfully, we invested in them we put a $500,000 check at a $7 million valuation, and he expressed to me that we're betting on the founders. We're betting on the founders figuring it out. They could fail this run, that we'll figure it out, they'll figure it out next run. And as a result of that, we actually invested in the guys from YGG, Gabby, a good friend of mine. These are some of the now industry giants because they were so crazy enough to build for the future. And basically, obviously for those that don't know, Axie Infinity was instrumental in proving $1 billion on-chain transaction volume in the last cycle. They put actual food on the table in countries like Philippines and also developed nations that really sort of coined the term play to earn. Of course, it's not a perfect model because some people now look at it, there's some Ponzi-nomics on it. But without these companies like Axie and Steppen to prove $1 billion on-chain transaction volume, we wouldn't be here today in terms of talking about gaming. So who we are in terms of VC. I think what we've sort of learned as builders and early on builders, we are not really just a check. We look at a company and sort of get the deep down of understanding the founders and really look at strength in numbers. We built an impressive sort of ecosystem. We currently have over 500 companies within the ecosystem. And then we look at bold ideas. So for those out here today that are building, I highly recommend not even just looking at Animoca ecosystem, but for all the other participants in the space when you're fundraising, study the ecosystem. Look at what you're solving for other people before presenting to them, because I meet maybe 1,000 sort of companies a year. 90% don't look at our ecosystem. Because if you're solving a problem for me, it's very easy for me to write a check to invest in different companies, right? So that's one thing that we'd like to share. We actually do believe that, having been early in the space in tech, we do believe that gaming becomes a very important segue to onboard user acquisition. And one of the biggest challenges we see today right now is, obviously Web 2, we've seen the acceleration on the platforms, Google, iTunes, et cetera. They unfortunately are partners, but at the same time, they are the ones that control multi-billion users in user acquisition, which today they don't really have a clear stance on Web 3 and how to onboard. Because effectively they're charging a toll fee. 30% toll fee, how do you get in here? How do you share NFTs, right? So we do believe that we can create together and builders together to create a decentralized, more equitable internet for the future. And this is what we're seeing with the digital assets, NFTs, et cetera. So we do hope to encourage builders to come in. And we think that this cycle is super exciting. For those that have been following the gaming sector, there's an inverse effect right now. There's a major layoffs in the gaming sector right now for Web 2. I was just at GDC 2 days ago. And we think that this cycle with Bitcoin cracking all-time highs, we're going to see a lot of liquidity and opportunity for investors to invest in the best builders coming into the space. And we all agree, great content brings culture and brings users. This whole sector needs additional 10 to 100 million users, and I think it will completely change the landscape. So, people that say there's not a lot of users, the big brands which I came from when I used to work with all these brands, they're all coming into the space, right? They all understand one thing best out of all folks. They understand culture. And this is really aspirational culture. I think all these brands that are labeled here, and maybe many more, are coming into the space and studying it. Obviously, we had the key taglines last sector on metaverse. It's going to take a lot of time. But with companies like Roblox actually coming into the space and developing NFTs, we think this is a great win. We think Roblox, with over 200 million users, really going to drive the acceleration on understanding what digital assets mean. And gamers, for those that are gamers here, you guys all already understand what digital currency means, what's trading, what's staking, and all that sort of good things in Web3. You guys already understand it. So I do think that this is going to be an acceleration stage of where we're at in the industry. So in measuring unicorns, I think Miro was mentioning that we've seen some good ones. And this is just a few. I would name a few because there's a lot that has been coming in the last couple of sectors. Animoca has grown substantially too as well ourselves. When I joined in 2018, we were investing off balance sheets and also using our shares to invest. Through the lens of 2018, we made some really sizable, small bets at the time, but really betting on the foundation of the founders. OpenSea, Axie, and we acquired, for those that know the Sandbox, we actually acquired the Sandbox. So we're still the largest owner of Sandbox. Still a lot of work to do. I don't think it's proven that the sector is really there yet in terms of maturity. But as a company, we're seeing that a lot of companies really grow to incredible sizes. So I want to touch upon them. I know there's a huge interest in meme coins. And not to say that there's not investment advice, but obviously we think that meme coins are really interesting, and we've been studying it internally. I have a deep thread on my Twitter. I'll share with you guys later. But I do think that meme coins actually have this inherent sort of feature on culture, right? And for a lot of people that play video games drive a lot of engagement and culture. So we do see that this is effectively encouraging people to understand. Obviously, there's a little element of gambling onto it, which I don't necessarily condone. But I think this is really exciting to get people excited about this sector. Okay, some of the, this might be not investment advice, but some of the very exciting sort of narratives I'm seeing. I was at ETH Denver not too long ago, a couple weeks ago, and I just checked my Telegram. I met 350 people in ETH Denver, of which half of them were fundraising on ideas. We think this is extremely exciting, right? We're seeing very pattern sort of takes right now, back in 2020, 2024. It's right back at the bull market. We invested in a company called Memecoin, for those that follow, have done very well. We think Memecoin is actually founded by a gentleman named Ray Chan, who was from 9gag. 9gag at the peak of it had 6 billion views a day on his website. So we think that he's looking at a long-term viability of building on a meme. Two is some of the narratives that you guys may have been following. Bitcoin is going to be, I believe, one of the key drivers of this cycle. The question is, can we build on Bitcoin, right? If we can build on Bitcoin, we're tapping into $1 to $1.3 trillion of liquidity in the market. This has been one of the hottest sort of narratives in discussion for this cycle. And I tell our founder that even Animoca as a company, the telltale signs of when the market's here is when we get rejected out of a deal. So we got kicked out of a deal because the market's that hot right now. So I think this is something for the builders out here, the engineers out here, do study the ecosystem, what people are building, and understand the limitations and what opportunities are building. And AI. So for our fund two, which we're kicking off right now, we're looking at these key narratives: Bitcoin, AI, DePIN as some of the sort of founding industries that will shape Web3. So we started investing, seeding into companies like KIP Protocol, which is one of the first decentralized AI protocols that we think is going to be pretty powerful to protect digital ownership rights. So this is a slightly outdated, but I think for those that don't know, gaming is actually a massive, massive industry. It sort of makes music and box office movies pale in comparison. And why I put this here is we think that the industry is lacking a very clear mechanism for user acquisition still. As I mentioned earlier to you, that the traditional sort of platforms are still kind of restricted in growth. I think the latest numbers for gaming is about $190 billion. We think that this is the type of audience that will come into the space and really be the accelerant for user acquisition. If we added 20 million users to 100 million users into the space, the whole industry, including DeFi protocol, liquid staking, will all change, right? And we do see digital assets as one of the key sort of foundation pieces for this to drive. For those that have seen, Asia is taking a leadership role in terms of regulatory best practices. So our group sits with the Hong Kong government. They learned very early they missed out on some of the biggest companies in the world in Hong Kong. They operationalized the government to have a 24-person digital asset task force team. Hong Kong will be pushing forward 5 stablecoins and focus on DeFi protocol regulation. We've seen the same sort of developments in Japan as well too. In Japan, one of my favorite cities, is really crucial because I think they're sitting on some of the world's most respected IP. You know, the Hello Kitties, the gaming giants like Pokemon, all sit in Japan. They are all studying Web3 and how we can come to this space as well too. So just to touch upon, I think we're super early, right? Animoca made the bet and investments in this space primarily because we felt that this sector had a lot of legs to grow for the future and iteration of the internet. We have seen in the past that gaming is the first driver of user acquisition. We're proven right by seeing companies like Axie, STEPN come into driving people's curiosity to build. But we're also engaged with some of the biggest sort of builders in the world, including Sony, Sega, Square Enix, which is an investor in our fund. They're all building. One of the most fascinating things I did last year was I spent 2 weeks in Japan. I sat down with Square Enix. For those that know Final Fantasy, they have a 6-person tokenomics team. They know that they're sitting on a $1 billion IP. They don't care about them building a great game. They want to understand what does tokenomics mean for the future of the game in their sector. So this is something I'm really impressed about because they didn't ask us how to build a game. They asked us what tokenomics meant. How do we list, right? So those are the things that these giants are thinking, but they move very slow because they're such large IP brand partners. For those, this is something on the web you guys should definitely download. This just sort of summarizes the growth of gaming and content. I think this is something Animoca really started off incubancy in 2009. We were very early in terms of builders, right? We think that blockchain gaming could hit $600 billion in the future. So this is because it ties into finance and different derivatives of trading and et cetera. So definitely take a deeper look into this. And I think that we're at the beginning of this space. Okay, so why I think this is exciting for us to see in the bear market. Having joined the company in 2018 and invested in the companies when funds were not really easy to access, we saw the same thing in 2023, the end of 22, that great companies and great builders, a lot of the noise was gone. The builders that had the deep conviction, that were crazy enough to come build in this sector, came out from companies like Zigna, like Sega. We had a gentleman come out from 20 years with Call of Duty Mobile, coming into Web3. Part of the reason why is that, as you know, the giant of Tencent is pretty predatory. When they see companies that work on Web2, they're going to come and copy the model, throw millions of dollars at it, right? So these people came out. And I think that we're going to see an accelerant of these people, top talent come into space. Sorry, I hit this button. So where we're at today, I think we're still the numbers are still growing, but quite low. I think we heard some other gentlemen speaking about the users, but we also made an investment into Ledger and also MetaMask, partly to look at the data. Where are we in the users, right? So I think that as we grow, I think one of my bold bets for this sector is I think this generation, this sort of run, we're going to see the first million daily active users. with sustainable tokenomics. So we're seeing several companies that have the ability to grow like this right now. So super excited to see that the builders come out. These are some of the few that have sort of been incubated from Animoca, pre-seeded from Animoca, that had the, kudos to the team to survive the bear market, come out now. I think Mavia, one of our companies that is building a great game, seeing a lot of sort of traction. From an investment side, this is something that, if they came out during the cycle during 22, 23, there would be no opportunity to list liquidity. So we were seeing a 33x unrealized gains on Mavia. Nine Chronicles is slightly higher, and Age of Dino is one that's just about to be launching right now as part of our portfolio. So these have been reflected since July 2022. Some of the latest ones, it's been pretty impressive, right? When we first invested in Blocktopia, that's our first 1000x return. It's cycle driven, right? So obviously, Animoca does not typically cash out in all the positions, but we capitalize and take position. And for Star Atlas, we were actually a 100x return on that. And what happened is, what we usually do is we take a portion of our investments and redeploy into innovation in this space. So my great friend, Gabby Dizon, actually launched a guild model for those that have followed. And we actually end up buying 9,000 ships on Star Atlas to lease the game, to really sort of propel the innovation, support the innovation in the space. So these are just a few of the ones that we've seen some incredible sort of returns from the fund. And also, what I'm most proud about is all these builders are still building, right? They didn't exit the sort of industry, they're still building in the space. Cool. So what we typically do annually for my team, I have a very lean team of 6 people. We sit in the Animoca offices in Hong Kong. They have 200 people in the Animoca group. We typically, what we call, throw spaghetti on the wall. What are the key sort of theses that we're seeing that we want to invest in and we were betting on? So these are some of the ones that we wrote several years ago. A lot of them have sort of panned out in terms of what we're seeing. And we haven't kicked off this year yet because it's been crazy. But some of the things that we think will be the drivers of this sort of sector will fall into these key categories of infrastructure and content. So I think L1, L2, as you guys have all seen, are coming back and a lot of new companies being built. So what I'm bearish about right now, one is Berachain is building a lot of stuff, getting a lot of hype. We're seeing Monad doing a lot of great things. So we're staying on tune on top of all these things. And one company that we're particularly quite interested in, I think you guys all have it on your app, is actually Telegram. So we're investors in the Ton ecosystem. Ton ecosystem to us is another mechanism potentially to have a clear path of user acquisition. Arguably, they say they have 800 million users. I'll give it a 50% discount, 400 million users. 400 million users is a really good path to understand, can we use this as an onboarding platform and mechanism for users? They just integrated the wallet. They have a lot of trading bots. For those that are building, highly recommend to take a look at it. We think they want to dream to become like one of the super apps in China called WeChat. We think that's a really interesting mechanism, and we think this might be a mechanism for onboarding. And this is just really, we've grown the ecosystem. I'm really proud that we've grown it to close to 600 companies in the ecosystem. Again, not every company in venture building survives, but founders usually pivot and look for different opportunities. We're seeing one of our key strengths in the ecosystem is really to not our funding, but really the network effects of Animoca as a company. So we love to sort of understand what people are building, how can we help them, and as we diversify our sort of views on how we sort of support different founders, we're excited to see how we can support. So that's a really short sort of presentation. I'd love to, there's a lot of questions. I sat down with the USC team earlier, so I'd love to sort of get more questions. And for those that want to get in contact, there's just my contacts on my Twitter. I'm quite active in terms of what we write about, what we're doing in this space. So please do add me and say hello. Thank you, guys. Okay. Yep. So if there's any questions, please feel free.
Thank you. What is the role or opportunity for DAOs in Web3 gaming?
Oh, it's huge. If you guys have looked at, so we're one of the largest investors of, for those that know, the Bored Ape and Yuga Labs. So at the time, Animoca, we put $100 million into Yuga Labs at the time. And it's really interesting. It's very serendipitous because our founder got sick with COVID in LA and started hanging out with the founders. And on a daily basis, we're supposed to be building a couple games for them. And they invited us to be part of their board. So we ended up advising on the token design, the listing strategy, and also took advisory on launching the other deed, the CODAs. So huge. If you look at the Ape Improvement Program, AIP, for those that are building, they have a massive, very active DAO structure. Funny enough, I just put a proposal in there too as well. So take a look at that, and I think that's really powerful as a mechanism for the future of governance for their token and token advisory, their management.
Hey there. Thanks for coming today. So I had a question about the narrative of gaming and crypto gaming. So I've been doing work in the past few years, launching projects on Web3, partnered with CNN, Forbes, and Warner Records. And now I'm working with more different industries, like in beauty, like L'Oreal and Superplastic. And they all kind of have interest in gaming, not so much in NFTs, obviously, because that meme and the PF piece kind of died. Their ambivalence is mostly dictated by the fact that the larger gaming atmosphere is still a little not into this yet. And when they read things on like Kotaku and CNN and stuff like that, they're kind of repelled by the word crypto and blockchain being tied to gaming. So has Animoca thought about addressing that narrative, or what other hurdles does it see as it tries to expand this? Or do you guys see it as a totally different bubble that's expanding alongside traditional gaming?
Well, that is a great question. I think if you look at the Fortnite, the sponsorship from LVMH, they're going deep into it. They have a digital assets team too out of Paris, Alga Ventures, I believe, right? So they are definitely studying it and understanding it. They launched their $50,000 NFT that you can't trade, so I don't know why people want to buy it. I asked about it just for curiosity. But I think the folks like, we have a good friend here in LA, Figgy, who works for Beeples. We had invested in him early. He got bought by Yuga Labs. He's the one that drove the discussion on the Gucci apes and then the Gucci crossover to Yuga Labs. I ended up getting one that necklaces. I regret because ETH is quite high. But Gucci is super excited. Gucci has a whole, they're developing their whole team to understand digital assets. So I think each company is at a different stage of understanding. We also work with a top firm out of New York called Anomaly. Anomaly is I think they won Agency of the Award this year, but L'Oreal, Chipotle, some of the biggest clients, right? Chipotle has, I think, 25 million users on the ambassadorship program. 2 years ago, they asked us, can we put Chipotle on Sandbox, and can they buy Chipotle anywhere in the world on Sandbox? So they have those questions, right? So a lot of fundamental technical challenges aren't solved yet, but I think coming from a brand side, I think every one of them want to be in this space, understand how they can connect better with their audiences. There's still sort of a lot of inherent risk and understanding. So I do think that we're seeing, as the pickup from the Japan community, I know Nintendo, they're all testing things, right? And then they're one of the, for me, one of the biggest IPs in the world, because they could do $1 billion at the box office with Super Mario Brothers, followed by a 20 million Zelda sold, and a 3 million download for Pokemon Sleep. Right? They are still a traditional business generating hundreds of millions of dollars from traditional mechanism, but they are studying what does digital asset mean for the future. And I think it's going to take a little cycle as we sort of have clear regulatory sort of listing structure and revenue generation, right? So brands are asking for us that we're meeting, and Sandbox is a really good sort of gauge. Sandbox, I believe, signed over 150 brand partners on the Sandbox ecosystem, and they initially signed The Walking Dead on Sand. So they built a whole Walking Dead ecosystem there as well. So I definitely think they're coming in. I think they're being more cautious. Similar to 20 years ago when digital wasn't a thing yet. That's I'm showing my age, but they didn't have a digital team, right? A digital team was very new to them because they don't understand search, ad tech at the time. I think Web3 is not really digital, but they're throwing it into that bucket. Heather.
Hi, yeah, hello. Thank you, James. Thank you for coming. Really informative talk. I think this actually dovetails into my question. You started answering it there already with Web3 and the desktop interface, right, presents a lower barrier to entry, but what about the consoles, right? So you mentioned Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, the three biggest consoles for gaming. I'm currently, pretty deep into the Zelda adventure right now on the Switch. I have young children. They're very invested in the console experience.
Yeah.
So how are those, and you mentioned that they're starting to dabble, but like where are we right now with those major console manufacturers?
Oh, that's a great question. I think if you look at, we have a company in our portfolio called Darewise. So Darewise, Ben Chobert has taken a leadership role on Ordinals, but he's ex-Ubisoft. So he spent a decade, I think he spent a decade at Ubisoft, and he also worked on Assassin's Creed. So obviously Ubisoft is still a family-run sort of one of the larger studios. but they put a strategic investment check in Animoca a couple years ago, really to stay on top of understanding what this means. I think a lot has to do with the governance of the actual Microsoft. We have another company out of Japan, and I think he's in San Fran now, called Swords of Gargantia, which is on the Oculus. So they have like 500,000 downloads, pretty impressive, high revenue generating. They came to us for investment because they wanted to see if their game can parlay into a digital asset and collectibles. And they're very close to the Oculus team, but they can only launch on non-official Oculus storefront at the moment. So a lot of it has to do with the conglomerate still weighing their T&Cs and legal. How do we generate revenue from Web3 gaming? And I think this is where the opportunity is, right? And obviously these games are quite big in terms of budgets, right? One of the closest ones I could sort of say is Sharpnel. I think the group level put a check in there. These guys came from the Microsoft studios, right? So they are coming, but I think, again, boils down to distribution, right? The traditional publishing model. Do we have a clear mechanism of publishing? And do we have a clear mechanism of revenue share for these companies? I think the future of revenue share, I think the gentleman before me spoke, wallet as a service. On-chain wallet, and we invested in maybe 4 or 5 wallets. One particular one that's doing quite well is called Particle Network. We think the future of on-chain transaction volume will really be the best mechanism for revenue generation, right? If I hold 10 million users, you hold 10 million users, and our players play across each other's game, that sort of relationship should be done on-chain, completely transparent. You take revenue from my users, our NFTs can cross interoperability. That's something that we haven't seen yet because there's not enough users in this space yet, right? So consoles, I think, will take a little bit of time, but then they're going to be coming as well too. We're done? Maybe 2 more questions?
Thank you. Hey, James.
Hello.
Thank you for your time. So far in this conference, you're the only person I've seen talk about music, and I wanted to understand what's your thesis there. Very interested in learning about royalties in terms of music ownership as well for fans. Yeah.
Excellent. I mean, that's an industry that we've been trying to tackle. I think several ones on our radar that we're very much excited about. One is education. We have a company in our portfolio called Open Campus that we invested back in 2016. We think that democratization, one of the most important people in our universe right now is teachers, right? But teachers really don't get paid. We think that their coursework can be tokenized and that the rev share could be shared back to them. So Open Campus, please check it out. It's on the App Store. It's something that we think we want to democratize. How do we make a NFT not a security? And how do we sort of give back the ownership and revenue to the creators if they're hitting KPIs? Say 1 million downloads and your kids are learning ABCs, et cetera. We want to pay the creator. Music, we looked at it from multiple angles and have made several investments. One of the biggest challenges with music is the ownership. There's 100 people owning a music track. And we do, unfortunately, even though I'm a user of Spotify, we think they're kind of predatory in the sense that none of the creators, if I make a hit today, I get 1 billion views, I don't get paid for it. Barely get paid for it, right? So we do think that that's a sector to be disrupted. So several companies we invested in, one's called Soundman, they're looking at generative AI music, right? If we're creating a tune that has multi-billion users downloaded, do we share the revenue? How do we share the revenue from a token perspective? So I think we're engaged with talks with Time Warner and several other Warner Music and this stuff as well too. But it's really hard because I still think there's a lot of moving components. I think what will go first is actually movies. We have several movie creators that are backed by independent studio or self-funded by financial studios that don't want to go the traditional route of HBO or Netflix. They want to go fractionalization on NFTs to let the people fund the movie, right? We think that's going to be one that's going to move faster as a cultural piece than music. I think music will follow as we disrupt, but you still got the conglomerates and the giants protecting it. Are we set for time?
There, let's give him a round of applause.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, guys.
James.